Today on Metcast, I'm joined by Pat Ragazzo of SI Sports, who's going to break down the Brandon Nimmo trade and what it means for the future of the New York Mets. What could the corresponding move be? We're going to discuss it next on Metcast. Welcome back to another live episode of Metcast, friends. As always, I am Ray, joined by today Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated, breaking down the Brandon Nimmo trade. All I ask you is that you like, subscribe, turn those notifications on, consider becoming a member if you want to be locked in to get your chats read live on air. And with that said, Pat, the earth-breaking news, Brandon Nimmo gets shipped to Texas. Obviously, he has a no-trade clause, had to approve it. The Mets getting Marcus Semien back in return, a guy with 3 years on his deal left. What do you get? What is your biggest takeaway from this trade?
It was a shock. I mean, I know we heard that Nimo could be had earlier in the week. I believe it was from Jeff Passan. And apparently when there's smoke, there's fire. And I mean, this was a move where the Mets improved their defense. They didn't improve their offense by getting Semien. I'm shocked. I mean, I was on another podcast a couple days ago, and I said that I didn't think Nimmo would get moved because he was owed $102 million across 5 years. And they found a partner in Texas who was willing to move another big contract in Semien, plus take $5 million from the Mets as well. They were able to get a deal done. So a little bit shocking. Brandon Nimmo was a beloved player by many. Very good, great guy, just from getting to know him over the years, being around the team. I mean, it really signals the initial takeaway is that it signals that David Stearns is breaking up this core that we've seen underachieve over the last several years. So, with the exception of 2024, of course, but it's the Mets are going for a culture shift here, which I reported earlier in the month that they recognized after the slow collapse they had last season that they needed a culture change, and this is this tops it. I mean, this move was pretty earth shattering.
So what exactly do you take away from this as the Mets direction? We heard about the core change, which you kind of mentioned there. Now there's another player of the core that's on the block. We all see it. The free agent, obviously Pete Alonso. There's a lot of rumors out there, potentially Cincinnati, Boston's involved. Are the Mets now apt, dare I say, to potentially bring back a Pete Alonso now that Brandon Nimmo is gone? You don't have to worry about in 3 years or 2 years him becoming a full-time DH. Alonso, if you want to bring back for 1 year as a first baseman and then potentially slow walk him into that DH role down the line, does it give them more of that freedom, dare I say, to make a move like that towards Alonso? Or do you see Alonso gone and this whole core? You can see McNeil getting traded, but I just seen John Heyman put out a tweet saying it feels like as of right now, Jeff McNeil is going to be an ex-Met. Like, it is out there. He is going to be gone. You're talking about a massive shakeup to guys that have been here for 4, 5, 6 years now. Or do where do you see a direction taking them?
I think that McNeil definitely is somebody who's most likely going to get traded this offseason. I reported that before all this happened a couple weeks ago as well, that the expectation was they were going to float him on the trade market. Since then, others have reported that he's drawing trade interest, and he's coming off a solid season that didn't end well. I think that McNeil is most likely going to be moved, especially since Semien is blocking him at second base now. I don't buy that McNeil is going to play first base for the Mets next season. I don't see how they could do that. I mean, I know he's super versatile, and I don't doubt that he could play the position, but I just don't think that that's plan A or plan B. Pete Alonso is a whole different story. I mean, the expectation was that they were going to move on from him unless he accepted a team-friendly deal, and I don't see them giving him the years that he wants. I think he's going to get 5, 6, 7 years from someone else. And I just don't see the Mets, being comfortable going there, I should say. I think that the Nimmo deal the Nimmo trade, of course, tonight kind of signals an overhaul that we're going to see this winter, and it creates more roster flexibility. So if they did bring Alonso back, their defense on the right side of the infield did improve with Simeon, who wanted a Gold Glove this year. Alonso could DH more, which I believe is the plan if they bring him back. But yeah, now maybe it opens the door for them to go after a Cody Bellinger, maybe a Kyle Tucker. I mean, Kyle Tucker, I think, would have to push Soto to left field. I'm not sure the Mets are willing to do that. I don't know that that's the best plan if you're trying to improve your defense either. But yeah, I think that the Mets are going to be heavily in on Bellinger now, and the trade of Nimmo really, paves the way for that.
Now, let me ask you this. A player that we've heard could potentially be on the trade block, a team that is for sale, Pat, or potentially for sale. Those are at least the rumors. Trying to shed payroll. The rumors are out there. What do you make of a guy potentially like Fernando Tatis Jr. becoming available on the open market? A, would the Mets be interested? Obviously, he won the Platinum Glove, so the defense there is improved. And
Yep.
B, would they be willing to give up the haul it would require to obtain a guy of his talent?
I think the Mets would be interested if he was available. I'm just not so sure that he's available. I know that the Padres, obviously, they might be going into an ownership sale, so that could force their hand. But if not, I mean, AJ Preller's the most aggressive general manager in all of baseball, and he tries to win year in and year out. And I just don't see him trading a player like Fernando Tatis Jr. I don't think it would go over well in that clubhouse or in that organization. And yeah, I think the Mets would have to be interested, and a number of teams would be interested if he was available. And the Mets might wind up making a call to see if he's available if they haven't already. I haven't heard anything on that front, but yeah, I'm just not so sure that the Padres are going to be trading Tatis Jr. Although it would be a big splash for the Mets and would greatly improve their ball club.
Yeah, and you know what? I look at it like this. After such a disappointment last year, we saw the apology letter from Steve Cohen to fans. They raised the ticket prices, the price of parking, everything. We showed out more than we ever have before in the past, over 3 million strong. I'm personally wondering, Pat, I know you say you had force Soto to left field. Tucker's a solid fielder. He's not a crazy great fielder, but he's a solid fielder out there and right. You can then justify to this fan base, you go get a guy like Kyle Tucker, you could justify a Tyron Taylor starting in center field because of the great defense. The OAA is great, but as a Carson Bench comes through the system, and then again, we all know how much David Stearns loves his prospects. I'm not so sure he'd be willing to give up a Carson Bench, the apple of his eye, the first ever first-round pick he ever got, in a Tatis deal where Tucker costs you money. So what? You lose a qualifying offer. Since when has draft picks ever mattered in Major League Baseball? All of a sudden, these last couple of years, it feels like they matter, but not anymore. I mean, the Mets have lost draft picks. They've gone further back in the draft. And what have they done? They got Mitch Voigt and Carson Bench the last 2 years. Oh, and a guy named Ilian Pena. All three who will probably be top 100 prospects over the next couple of years. So it hasn't seemed to slow them down at all. Do you think the Mets are willing to part with the prospects? Or Davis, or maybe could you see Steve Cohen completely opening his books and say, you know what? I'll take another $350 million deal in Kyle Tucker, because if we do that and Carson Bench is the real deal, our outfield is set for potentially the next decade. You could be talking.
I don't think they'll trade Bench. I do think that they'd be more willing to trade prospects for talent as opposed to dishing out another $350 million plus deal after signing Soto last year. I don't think it'll be Bench. I think it'll be Jet Williams is the name to keep in mind. I mean, I think that I know that's your guy, but
shout out to Jet. Had him on the show. I'll link it in below.
I mean, he's blocked now by Marcus Semien for the next 3 years.
And Lindor, he's a shortstop.
And Lindor, and yeah, he was his primary position shortstop. His best position is probably second base, and he can play center field. But you have Benj coming up through the system, and who's seems to be ahead of him in the pecking order for center field. So if there was a time for the Mets to go get a Tarek Skubal, a Joe Ryan, a Sandy Alcantara, except I'm not entirely sold that he's going to be traded this offseason. One of those guys to go out and get an ace. Like, I think Jet would be the guy who you would package as opposed to Benj, and as opposed to spending, another massive contract bringing in like they just did with Soto last year.
Now that we can kind of pivot to the starting rotation here, because clearly there's a lot of work to be done. If the Mets go out and they bring in just a Michael King, I think fans will be very upset. I know you can't do anything about Sean Manaea, that $25 million over the next couple of years. Frankie Montas, they're already eating that money. So if I'm the Mets, I don't even count that towards anything. But I will say this. The Mets have two pitching prospects. Let's be real. Nolan McLean ain't going anywhere. I don't care if it's Tariq Skubal. He's just simply not going anywhere. But are the Mets, in your opinion, going to be willing to stomach moving a guy like Jonah Tung and Brandon Sproat to acquire a Freddie Peralta? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't think the Mets are in on Skubal. I think the asking price is going to be crazy. They're going to want the Carson Benjes on top of those pitchers. But do you think David Stearns will have the appetite to get rid of some of his prized gems to acquire a one-year rental?
It's tough to say. I mean, it makes them better in the short term, and they just got older with Marcus Semien, so acquiring a 35-year-old, and the window is to compete is the next few years with some of the veterans they have on the roster, and obviously with Soto, and I think that if you're trading Sproat and potentially Jonah Tung or one of them, ideally. To get a pitcher, you're hoping that they develop into the next Freddie Peralta, the next Tariq Skubal, the next Joe Ryan. So, I mean, it would be hard to stomach, giving up those guys for a rental, but, it's also, it'd be an aggressive move. And it's one that, they should consider making, considering what a crapshoot prospects really can be sometimes.
Now, let me ask you this. Where do you stand in the Edwin Diaz situation with the New York Mets? Clearly, there's a lot of offers out there. Rumor has it LA could be getting involved. Other teams as well. The Yankees supposedly checked in. Maybe the Blue Jays. Do you see the Mets retaining him? And what are they going to do with the rest of this bullpen?
I think they have to retain Edwin Diaz. And I'm going to pour cold water on the Dodgers' pursuit of Diaz. I think that they're going to be hesitant to dish out big money to a reliever after what they just gave to Tanner Scott and having it backfire last season. So I really don't buy that the Dodgers are seriously in on Edwin Diaz. And we've seen conflicting reports. I mean, some people have said that, the Dodgers seem like the perfect fit and that they're going to go after him. And then other reports are saying that they're not big game relief hunting. And I would kind of, based off what I've heard, it's more so the latter about the Dodgers. So I think the Mets have to bring him back. I don't think that anyone is going to be satisfied if they bring in Devin Williams to be their closer. After the up and down season he just had with the Yankees. I know he finished well with the Yankees, but ideally he would be your setup man next year and to Edwin Diaz, not the other way, not have him be the replacement, of course. So I think that the Mets almost have to bring back Edwin Diaz more so than Pete Alonso.
Now, let me ask you this. You brought up Devin Williams, a guy who we know the Mets have checked in on, potentially made an offer for. That's at least what I'm being told. Do you think that he would come to New York, the New York Mets, in a setup role? A lot of people forget. Chapman, remember just a couple of years ago, Pat, the Mets had a bigger offer than the Pirates to bring him in, and he said no. He went to Pittsburgh to close, hoping he would get traded down the line. Do you see Williams, who, remember, was traded to the Yankees? He had no say in whether or not he was a closer. Is he one of those guys that are going to say, nah, I want to go somewhere I could close? Look at my numbers when I had that adrenaline rush as a closer, a 1 and change ERA consistently in Milwaukee. Or is he going to be willing to take a setup role? Because if that is true, the Mets could set themselves up for major success, in my opinion, with that 1-2 punch at the end of the pen. But it's going to cost you an absolute fortune.
Yeah, it is. It would cost a lot, and you invest a lot into relievers, and they have a lot of work to do in that bullpen. Right now they only have Brooks Raley in there, and they potentially got to give a massive contract to Edwin Diaz if they're going to bring him back, and then they got to fill out the rest of the unit. So, I don't know. With Williams, I mean, he might be more inclined to go somewhere where he could be the closer, maybe a smaller market, rebuild his value, and then get like a bigger contract next year, maybe retest the market next year. Or he decides he wants to be on a winner, and he enjoyed his time with the Yankees last year, being on a contender. And I know the Brewers have been contenders and made the playoffs in many years during his tenure in Milwaukee. But, maybe he enjoyed being in that bigger market. But I don't know. He didn't seem comfortable for most of his time with the Yankees last year. think it took a while for him to adjust. I mean, maybe he feels like now he's fully adjusted and he wouldn't mind staying in New York, but I'm not really sure about that. And closers historically seem to be more comfortable in their closing role, as we saw with Ryan Helsley when the Mets acquired him at the trade deadline, that he never really seemed to get comfortable pitching in the 8th inning role.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, if you're watching this, do me a favor, smash that like button. Greatly helps the show. Now, Pat, when you're talking about left field with the New York Mets, I know I'm listening to SNY and some of their guys over there. Well, the Mets are contemplating it, potentially filling it internally. You hear guys like Brandon Donovan being mentioned, which he could be Jeff McNeil for us. I'm totally cool with that. But to bring this guy in to be a starting outfielder and potentially, like, if the Mets lose Pete Alonso, Pat, where do they go? Where are they going to replace Pete Alonso's guaranteed 35 and Nimmo's 25? Simeon's not that guy anymore. He'll hit maybe in the low 20s on a great year, but he's hitting in the 230s. He's not the middle of the order. You could be talking about losing 2 middle of the order bats. And where are you going to go? Are you going to pivot to a Cody Bellinger? Like, is that really going to solve the issues? I think the Mets are kind of in a conundrum there. Where do you see them actually going here?
Well, to be fair, the Yankees did lose Juan Soto, who hit 41 home runs for them and helped, bring them to the World Series in 2024. And they did replace him with Bellinger, and Bellinger had a really good year, 29 homers, 98 RBIs, 814 OPS. So it is possible the Mets could go the same route and steal Bellinger from the Yankees, steal a star outfielder from the Yankees for the second straight year, potentially. I don't know, but yeah, that probably seemed to be the most logical choice is to go after Bellinger. I mean, to replace Alonso's power and maybe add some, it would be Kyle Schwarber, but I don't know that they would give that many years to a DH only power hitting left-hander. I mean, there is a room in the lineup for another lefty bat now that they lost Nimo, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say. Like, you're really looking at it through a Moneyball scope, I guess, where they talked about obviously Billy Beane and how they were going to replace Jason Giambi. Like, you can't. Like, you can only bring in a certain amount of players to replicate that production, I guess, if you look at it from that lens. But yeah, I think that Bellinger would be the number one replacement option if they did wind up losing Alonso.
Does he scare you? When you look at his seasons, Pat, he is like this. He rides the roller coaster. Every year he goes good season, bad season, 700 OPS, 800, 700, 800 last year. I'd be so scared to give him a 5 to 7 year contract. I understand the defensive versatility. And look, David Stearns doesn't lie. Every year Mets fans think, oh, we're going to do X, Y, Z. He lets you know what he's going to do. 2 years ago when he said we're not planning on making any crazy big moves. We're going to be competitive. We want to compete for a wild card. Not necessarily a wild card, but when you say compete, obviously that's what he was meaning. And that's what they did. And they added at the trade deadline a little bit. And then that's what happened. Then last year was, we're planning on being in on a lot of the big free agents. They go get a Juan Soto this past offseason. We're going to focus on run prevention. What does he do? He goes and gets the reigning Gold Glove Award winner at left, at second. And then Brandon Nimmo, it just is what it is. Baseball Savant has him in like the 46th percentile among OAA, outs above average, in left field. He is a subpar outfielder. The arm's not there, the same jump's not there, and it's only going to go downhill from there as he's got 5 years left. So that's why I look for them to potentially add something different in left field, and that's where I want to pivot to you. A lot of people aren't talking about this one guy, but he would help. Obviously, the infield defense might hurt left field a bit, but don't forget last year and the year prior, the Mets had Brett Beatty playing a little bit of left field, and they liked the way he looked. I watched him in spring training. He looked pretty good out there. Not great, but good. Could he be average out there? And then dare I say the Mets pivot to a shorter term answer at third base? Bregman potentially from the Red Sox?
I don't know. I mean, I think your outfield defense takes a big hit if you're putting Brett Beatty out there. I just don't see that as a logical plan if they are focused on run prevention and improving the defense. So, and that also just made me think now with the addition of Simeon that Brett Beatty playing second base might not happen as frequently anymore. I mean,
Ever.
Yeah, or might not happen ever again. But Beatty, I mean, sometimes he's made some some mental errors. It seems at the third base position, but he did show signs of being a very good defensive third baseman last season. I think that that's where they should keep him. And the left field experience really didn't work out in the minors. He struggled there, and I just don't see him adjusting to it in the major leagues. I think it's too big of a risk.
Now, let me ask you this. A player that the New York Mets were confirmed to go after at the trade deadline. The New York Post had an article saying the Mets swung and missed because a guy like Byron Buxton refused to waive his no trade. And then you get the report from The Athletic, the guy who covers them in Minnesota, talking about how now he is open to waiving that no trade clause. Could you see the Mets potentially revisiting that avenue? I know he's never healthy, 120 games last year, but the Mets were clearly willing to go after it at the deadline before settling for Mullins. What's your take on Buxton?
I did a story on this actually, I believe a week or two ago. I think the Mets should be calling Minnesota to see if he's available, and he's only owed $45 million across the next 3 years total. Mm-hmm. That's totally team-friendly deal, and it just depends on what they would have to give up to get him. But 3 years of control, $45 million total. Like, I think the Mets should be all over him. I think that he's would make them more of a balanced lineup with some more right-handed pop, and he's good defensively as well. So I think that that would be one way to fill out your outfield there and maybe leave a spot open for a Carson Bench or even a Jet Williams.
Yeah, you could really put Buxton at leadoff, Soto followed by the switch hitting Lindor, potentially Alonso returning, and dare I say, Pat, open up the wallet and get Cody Bellinger for left field. Get Peter. Maybe you think I'm nuts? I'm one of those guys. I'm like, Pete Alonso has never had protection in this lineup. It's always Jeff McNeil hitting behind him, a 0 power 240 hitting guy. You want Alonso to take his game to even the next level. Yep. What about doing something like that? Buxton would cost prospects not a lot of money. You bring in Bellinger, you still have money to spend after that potentially. Maybe those are your 3 moves: Buxton, Bellinger, Alonso, and then you fill out the rest.
The only reason they're not going to do that, and I'm always offense first. Like, I think that would be perfect and would make them a super stacked lineup and provide Alonso the protection that he deserves. I mean, he had Soto hitting in front of him last season, and he had a monster year. He had 38 homers, 126 RBIs, 871 OPS, 272 batting average. Like, 141 WRC plus. Like, Alonso was elite. He was a top 3 right-handed hitter in the game of baseball last season, and he's going to get paid from somebody if it's not the Mets. So, but the reason they're not going to do it is because there's so much work to do on the pitching staff. And remember, pitching's the reason why they collapsed last season. I mean, they were performing above their heads for the first couple months, and then everybody started going down with injuries. Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning,
Sanga.
This goes on and on.
Manaya.
Yeah, Manaya.
It's literally everybody.
Manaya got hurt in spring training, but so that's the gist of it. But Frankie Montas too. Like, that move was a disaster from the start. But
what did you think originally? Because I knew I shook my head like, what are we doing here?
With Frankie Montas?
Yeah, like, what was your initial feeling when they signed him?
Somebody who's very plugged in, who I talked to, who knows the game very well, played the game. He said to me, and this is a conversation I had around the signing, because I didn't get it at first either, because he was a disaster with the Yankees. He's dealt with shoulder problems.
Lit him up in the playoffs.
Injury issues, lit him up in the playoffs. He did perform well with Milwaukee besides in the playoffs in that wild card start. But yeah, this person and I had this conversation, and they said as long as he's healthy for the stretch run and for the postseason, it's a value type of deal. It's going to benefit, and it's going to play to the Mets' benefit. And that obviously did not happen. And now they cut their losses with them. They released him, and it's David Stearns' worst move since taking over as president of baseball operations, hands down.
Oh, without a doubt. And we got this final one from Andre. Does Tatis really fit the new core culture change the Mets are trying to create? If they were to, I guess, because of the PED suspension.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, he served his time and he's back and he's an elite player. And yeah, you never know how a big personality like that would fit in the Mets clubhouse. But that's something that you know, the scouts, that's partially what they get paid for, is to find out on makeup and fit. And yeah, that's something that they would have to evaluate before potentially bringing him in. But again, like we said, we're not totally sold on the fact that he's going to be available.
Yeah, I agree. Guys, that's what I have with Pat Ragazzo. Give him a follow over at Ragazzo Report over on X. Follow his work at Sports Illustrated. As always, I am Ray. And if you want to be locked in and get your questions read live on air like Andre just did, be sure to click below and become a member. For just $2 a month, you're guaranteed to get locked into the conversation. As always, let's go Mets. Thanks so much, Pat.
Thanks for having me.